Hi everybody, in this lesson we're going to be talking about the deformers. Deformers in Cinema 4D is a very powerful part and basically helps you in doing some really nice animations. Now I'm just going to dive right into deformers, and as we work you're going to see how effective they are in creating complex animations. Now I'm going to start by using the pen deformer. Now to access the deformers shelf, you simply go to this icon right here and you click on this and you see this multiple deformers right here in the shelf. Now I'm going to start with the collision deformer. Now if I click on my collision deformer, nothing happens. So basically it needs to be applied to an object, right? So I'm going to click on a plane and I'm going to make this collision a child of the plane. Currently I'm going to increase the plane to currently it's about 10 by 10 segments. I'm going to increase it about 50 by 50, so we now have 50 by 50 segments, 50 segments in the width and 50 segments in the height. Now the next thing I want to do is to click on a sphere, and I'm just going to turn the segment to about 40, and I'm going to reduce the radius to about half the size, so I'm going to make that 50. I'm going to just move it up a bit in the y direction. Now the next thing will be to click on my collision and go to my collider, and I'm going to make this sphere one of the collider objects right here. So if I click on the sphere and I drag this, see what happens. If I begin to move my sphere all the way down here, you see I begin to get some really nice deformation right here in my sphere, right? So because this is now set as a collision object on this collision deformer, thereby driving the plane. Now the next thing I want to do is to go to my collision deformer. Now if I drag this sphere a bit to the inside, see what's really happening there. We have some really terrible intersections going on. And if you go to my collision deformer, the way to fix that is to change this mode, right? So we're just going to try outside and see what happens. Alright, so outside is really fixing things. You select outside in the type of solver and it's really fixing things. So if I move this, see what happens. So you get this really nice deformation right here, right? Awesome. So this can be used in multiple ways, right? I remember using this on a project. So I was basically doing something for a mattress company, and they just really wanted to test how soft the foam were. So there were these little ball things that had to go into the foam, right, to see how soft those foams are. So those are some of the things you can do with the collision deformer right there. So I can open up the collision deformer and then begin to mess with some of the settings, right? So there's a setting I'm actually looking for, and that will be the okay, yeah, right under the object here we have the restore shape, right? So basically the restore shape basically means that how quick is this object going to go back to its original state before it was deformed. So if I click on this plane and on the sphere and I move this up a bit, I can simply create a quick animation, right? So I'm going to go to frame 0. I'm going to click on a keyframe right there, and I'm going to store that keyframe, and I'm going to go all the way to 90. I'm going to drag this down, so on the y-axis, and I'm going to select the keyframe right there. Actually the keyframe I created on frame 90, I'm going to highlight that and move it back a bit to about 50, right? And on frame 90 I want this to go back up. I'm going to hit the keyframe there, so I'm going to hit play and see what happens. Alright, so we see what's happening there. If I decide to come back to the collision deformer and drop this down to about say 24, let's see what's going to happen. So it goes in, right, and so you see it gradually becomes slow as it comes back to original shape. Let me drop this down to about 6 so you see the effect really nice. Alright, so you see it takes a bit of time for it to go back, for it to restore back to its original shape. So if you make this, the smaller this value is, the longer it will take for this object to go back to its original shape, right? So those are some of the things you can do with the collision deformer, right? So you could also set up an emitter to emit multiple objects, and as I hit this plane which the collision deformer is affected to, it will deform the plane, right? So that's the collision deformer. Now the next thing I want to quickly do is to just delete this collision deformer, delete the sphere. I want to show you a really interesting deformer, right? So I use this deformer a lot when I'm creating anything that has to do with cloth, right? So there's a separate cloth dynamics in Cinema 4D that allows you to create cloth simulations, right? But sometimes it kind of takes a bit of time to acquire that result you're going for, or it takes a bit of time to calculate, right? So you really want to go through this particular deformer to give you that quick cloth animation, and without having to spend too much time creating those simulations, those clothes simulations, right? And that deformer is called the jiggle deformer, right? The jiggle deformer is a very, very powerful deformer that I use a lot personally on multiple projects. So if I click on the jiggle deformer, I'm going to drag it directly under this. That is basically I'm making it a child of the plane, right, of the plane object. So if I drop this right here, I can see that Cinema 4D has made that a child of the plane, right? And the next thing I want to do is to go to my um, simulate right here. I'm going to go to my forces and I'm going to click on my turbulence, right? So if I play, nothing happens. So nothing is happening because under the jiggle deformer, under the forces, the turbulence force was not dragged right in this section here. So basically it's not having any effect. So basically it's not having any effect on this plane right here. So I'm just going to click on this deformer, on this turbulence force, and just drag it right here. So if I hit play, let's see what's going to happen. I'm going to hit play and nothing is happening. Actually, there's something happening, but you might not be able to see it. There's a slight movement going on right here. So in my turbulence, I'm going to turn up the strength to about 30 or 50, right? So see what's happening. All right, this is looking really good. But I mean, this is nowhere close to the clothes, a cloth like animation, right? This is nowhere close to how a cloth will actually behave. So what I want to do is to increase the scale to about say 100, and let's hit play. All right, so you see what's happening. We're getting some really nice cloth wrinkles in around this section. And what I want to do is just go to my plane effector and increase the width segment and the height segment. So I'm going to turn this to about 100, and I'm going to make this 100, and let's see how this is looking. All right, so this is giving us a really, really nice cloth like animation. So I can just quickly zoom in here and use this as a cloth animation, right? And one thing I can do is to just quickly click on this plane deformer, this plane object, and hold down alt, right, and click on the subdivision surface. So basically holding down alt is going to make this plane a child of this newly created subdivision surface, right? So now you can see what's really happening. We've basically we've subdivided the surface and it's looking more smooth. So this is giving us more of that cloth like animation. Now for the sake of our viewport, we could turn this off and just turn it on when we're about to render, right? So we can see what's really happening. So you have that really nice cool cloth animation going on, and you can just quickly continue to mess with your jiggle deformer and try and get more out of it. So currently the strength is set to 100. You could just play around with this and see what's happening. So currently if you reduce the strength, you see, so if you want something a little bit less in terms of the wrinkles, you could just drop this down, or you can pull this way up. The stiffness also, you can increase this. So basically that's going to create some stiffness within our cloth. If you drop this down, you see what's happening. So you have some really, really nice cloth like animation going right there, and you could just create some really nice camera angles and start to render out your cloth animation, right? So this is really, really simple. It doesn't really take too much time to create, and you get that really nice cloth animation you're going for. So you could turn this back on if you want to have some stiffness, and you could turn this down and see what is doing the structural. So basically you could just play a lot with these settings when you're less busy and just try and get the feel for how all of this works, right? So different kind of cloth simulations will require different kind of settings, right? So that is that about the jiggle deformer, right? So there's still tons of deformers right in Cinema 4D that gives you really, really amazing results. So I'm going to turn off the jiggle deformer. I'm going to take this plane out of the subdivision surface. I'm going to delete the subdivision surface and the turbulence, and I'm going to quickly drop this segment back to about say 50 by 50, and let's just try and look at another deformer right here. I'm going to click this, and the next deformer I want to create is the displacer, right? The displacer is a very, very important deformer as well. I'm going to click on the displacer and let's work with the displacer. Alright, so I'm going to make the displacer a child. That's a common thing. So a deformer most times has to be a child to an object for it to affect it, right? So I'm going to click on my displacer and go to my shading, and basically the displacer kind of work a little bit like the shader effector that we talked about in our previous class, where we have to load in a noise map, right? So if I click on my displacer, I can go to my shading and I can select my shader. I can input my noise map right here, and you can see what's really happening. You have this nice noise map going on. I can go to my plane and I can increase more of the segment to get something more smooth, right? And If I go to my displacer under my noise, I can select my noise and I can access the noise map setting that is being loaded, right? Um, so I'm just going to increase the global scale, make it about 700 and see what's really happening. So you see what's going on. I have this really nice noise, and I can quickly just drop in a value in the animation speed, and immediately we can see an animation going on. So some of the things you can use this for is trying to create something like a, so I'm just going to mess with these values and see. I can try and create something like a water surface, right? So I can turn this a bit and I get something that moves like an ocean surface, right? So all I need to do is just pipe in my materials, give it a kind of an ocean surface material, and boom, I get my ocean, right? So those are some of the things you can do with the displacer, right? Now in the next class, we're going to talk about, in the next lesson, we're talking about deformers part 2, and the lesson after that we're going to be using this deformers in an actual project, right? So I'm going to show you real I'm going to show you how to use this deformers creatively, right? We're not going to be touching on all of them, but we're going to be touching on some of them, and how you can really use them creatively in your project, right? You'll be surprised at the amount of things, at the tons of things you can do with the deformers in Cinema 4D, right? One of the things I want to quickly do is to just so I'm going to delete both of this, and I'm going to create a sphere, right? I'm going to turn this from standard. I'm going to turn this to icosahedron, and I'm going to reduce this a bit to about say 50, and I'm going to increase the segment to about say 40, right? So I have this really nice segment going. I think I want to make it about 60, so I have enough segments to deform. Now I'm going to click on my deformers. I'm going to click on my displacer. I'm going to make the displacer a child of the sphere, right? And I'm going to quickly note my noise map, because basically the noise map is what drives the displacer, and boom, there you have it. So we have this really nice sphere, right? So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create something organic. I'm going to click on this noise map, and I'm going to increase the scale to about say 700, and I think that's way too much. I'm going to drop it up to 500 and create animation speed to 1, and there you go. Now we have some really nice animation. Now this is a bit okay, sorry, the global scale is actually turned to 0. I wanted to make it about say 500, and you can see what's going on there. Now I want to do something really interesting with the noise map, right? So I'm going to go back, and what I want to do is just click on this, and in this same area where we load the noise map, I want to load something called layer, right? Now basically when I click on the layer, it's a way of combining multiple levels of different kind of noise map. So if I click on the layer, now I have the initial noise map we've created, right? So basically what Cinema 4D is doing when I click the layer is that it's placing the noise map underneath the layer, right? And we can go ahead and duplicate this noise map. So I can go to copy shader, and I can right click on this, and then I can click on paste shader. So now I have a duplicate of this noise map, right? So what I want to do is to first of all use the initial noise map to drive these big deformations there, and I can click on this and then make this a bit smaller, say about 100, and now I have some really nice smaller detail going on, right? So I can go back to this and then try and just mess with the blend mode and see what works. All right, so good, we have that really nice huge deformation going on, and at the same time we have a smaller deformation happening right here. So if I click play, see what we have. We have this really nice deformation, and I can just drop this in a subdivision surface by holding an alt, which is going to make that a child of the subdivision surface, and we have this really nice sphere thing going on, right? So you can continue to add more and more. So I can go to right click, copy shader, right click, I can click on paste shader, and I can click on this and make this even a smaller value, say a value of about 50, and now we have some really nice smaller deformations. I can go here and just try and make this maybe a screen, or just try highlights. Maybe I want to stick to multiply, and I get this really nice result. I can come back to this one. I can make this a bit bigger, say 300, and right, so you get this really nice sphere animation, right? Now I want to quickly, so that's how you create something like this, right? So one thing I want to do is I want to quickly go delete all of this, and I just want to quickly go back to my jiggle deformer, and I'm going to create a sphere I'm going to make this icosahedron, and I'm going to increase the segment to about 70 and drop this radius to about 50. Now I want to show you another application of the jiggle deformer. So I'm going to click on this, select the jiggle deformer, and I'm going to drop this and make this a child. And obviously, we want to create a force, say turbulence. Now there are multiple forces here, right? So if you're in Cinema 4D R20 downwards, you might not have this field force because this is a new addition. So I really can't remember if this was added in the Cinema 4D R21 or R20, but you might not be able to see this field force right here. So which is why I'm not using this for now. There's a separate lesson that I talk about this field force, right? So for now, I'm just going to let this be. So I'm going to create a turbulence again, and what I want to do is to go to my jiggle deformer and the forces. I'm going to drag some of the turbulence, and I can go to my alright. So what I want to do is to go to my turbulence and give it a strain of about, say, 100, and give it a scale of, actually I want to make the strength about 50, so the strength is not so much, and a scale of about 100, and I'm going to hit play. So basically that's what we get this really nice information going on right here. But what I want to do is to go, okay, so I'm about to do something really interesting. I'm going to click on the turbulence, and I'm going to go to the fall off area here. I'm going to create a spherical fall off, right? And I'm going to move the spherical fall off out. So basically, remember my explanation about fall off, right? So basically this spherical field here is going to carry the property of this turbulence right here. And currently what that means is that this turbulence effect, or this turbulence force, is only going to be basically activated within this spherical field, right? So like I said, this is going to be more like an activator. So if I hit play right now, the spherical field the turbulence has no effect on this sphere, because the spherical field's property is basically being activated within this region, right? So if I begin to move, so I'm going to quickly increase this to about 500, so we have some room to work. And if I begin to move this here, see what happens. It begins to affect it, because now this area here within this place is where the turbulence force is being activated. And as I move this here, see what happens. So we begin to have that effect right happening right here. So I can go back to my turbulence, and under my object I can turn on my strength to about 100, so we have something more drastic going on there. So I'm going to move this out a bit, and yep, so I'm going to go back here, and there we go. Now this is a bit too much. Oh, actually I typed in 10,000. All right, so that's a lot. I actually wasn't paying attention there, so I'm going to type it to 100. All right, so that's looking much better. I was beginning to think my 40 was misbehaving. All right, so click on my spherical field, and I can and you can see we have this really nice organic motion going on right there. Now this same thing I have created using my turbulence effector, I can also do the same thing using my displacer, right? So I'm just going to quickly pause this. I'm going to take away this jiggle deformer. I'm just going to hide this, deactivate both of these, and I'm going to go back to my displacer right here, make it a chart of the sphere, and I'm going to load in a quick noise map right here, and I'm going to create a fall off as well. So I'm going to make this a spherical field fall off, and if I move this displacer out here, see what happens. Oh sorry, so I want to move it in the X. So see what happens. We have this deformation disappearing, right? So this area here is where the displacer is most active, and as it begins to interact with the object, is going to have that effect right there. So there you have it, right? So that's basically the displacer and the jiggle deformer. So I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to delete this, and we're going to try and focus on another deformer right there. All right, so what I want to do is to open up this deformer, and the next deformer I really like to touch upon is the formula deformer, right? So we're going to be touching a lot of these deformers, so you have nothing to worry about. We're going to be touching on a lot of them. All right, so I'm going to delete this spherical field, and I'm going to create a plane, right? And I'm going to make this plane about 100 by 100, and I think this is too much. I'm going to leave this about 40. I don't want to bog down our computer, so 40 by 40 is fine. And I'm going to drop a formula deformer, and I'm going to make this a child. I'm going to make this go back to my object fit to parent, and I'm going to hit play. So we have nothing is happening, right? That's because on the sides you have nothing happening right here. So I'm just going to increase this a bit, and nice, beginning to see that the format going right here. So basically it's giving us that ripple effect, and you can decide to divide this by 2, and that's going to reduce the animation. So the larger the values, the smaller the ripples become. And that's one of the uses of the formula deformer. Right now you can decide to, maybe I can scale this deformer in a bit, and that's going to give us more ripples going on right there. So there you have it, right? So you have some really nice ripples there. Now one of the things you can do with this is to use a fall off to drive this deformation right here. So if I click on my formula and go to my fall off, and I should be able to use an object, right, to drive this. So I'm going to drop this radius down. I'm going to move this up, and what I want to do is go to my formula, and the default if I'm going to drive in a sphere right here. So basically it means the more I drag, the more closer this sphere is, this is going to start having effect, right? So you see what's happening there. So I can increase the sphere in this sphere a lot, and as I drag this closer, the deformation start happening, right? Which is really nice. But I don't think I want to do that. I want to just delete this, and instead of using an object, I want to basically use a spherical field, right? So sorry, that's not spherical field. I want to use a spherical field, and as I move this down here, you see what's happening. So one of the uses of this will be to create, or say for instance you're having a product you're trying to animate, and or you want to make the product cause this thing to ripple, right? So I see a lot of that in some product animations, see like a phone animation for instance. And as the phone basically drops down and touches the ground, we have this really nice ripples going on right here, so indicating the phone is having that effect on that thing, right? So what you can do is to use that phone as an object, use that phone as a fall off, right? So use the object itself, and it drives the deformation right there. Or you can as well just okay, I think I deleted my deformer right there, so I'm just going to quickly recreate that. And formula, I'm going to fit the parent and just increase this a bit. So what you can do is to go to the fall off section, create a for this one I'm going to create something like a capsule. I'm going to move it right here, and let's try and make it closer to this capsule here. So yeah, so I'm going to do that. Alright, so I'm just trying to make it match this reference, this object, as much as possible. And yeah, there we go. So I can just drag this away from this formula and just make it a child of this capsule. As this capsule moves, the object moves as well. So as this capsule moves closer right here, see what happens. The deformation start to happen really nicely, right? And you can as well just make this a whole lot bigger, right? So it's really causing some nice deep ripple going on, right? So in the course I'm going to show you how to properly use this, and we can get some really nice deformations with this, right? So I've used this on a project before, and I'm going to show you how I actually use this to create a really nice animation, right? So let me just quickly load up that project so you see exactly what I'm saying. All right, so this is a product animation I was made, and right here, okay, so it's not really that visible, but right here you can see. So right here there is that ripple thing going on right here. All right, so that's that about that. The next deformer I want to show you how to work with is so I'm just going to quickly create a plane first. All right, so the next deformer I want to show you to work with is this surface deformer right here. So the surface deformer is another very powerful deformer, right? So I'm just going to go right into it, and I'm going to click on my surface, and what I want to do is to create a sphere, right? So one of the things I can So one of the things I can do with the surface deformer is to use a different object, right, to drive animation in a much more complex object. So basically, this is what I'm saying. Say for instance, I have an object I've imported and it has so many geometries, right, and I need to perform some dynamics onto it. Now it would be a little bit tasking for Cinema 4D to do dynamics on a very very dense object, right? So one of the things you can do is to use your surface deformer to you create that animation you want on a less on a lesser detailed object. So basically, we have the sphere, and I want to duplicate the sphere. Hold down Control, right? And duplicate of the sphere is having more segments, say about 70. Now, Cinema 4D is going to take longer time to calculate all of this because of the amount of lines and vert and faces going on around here, right? So rather than doing that, I'm just going to use this object to drive the deformation of that particular detailed sphere object, right? So basically, one of the way you can apply this is, say for instance, you're trying to perform some nice dynamic simulation on a very dense object, right? So there's so many lines and faces going on around that object, say like a statue for instance, and you want the statue to inflate, right? So what you can do is to do a poly reduction on the statue, right? So you have a lower version of that statue, and you can use that statue to create your animation, and then use that animation to drive the actual detailed statue itself. So the way you use that is to use the surface deformer to transfer the animation from that less detailed object to the detailed one, right? So I'm going to illustrate that using a sphere for you, and I'm going to hide this first sphere. I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to click on my tag, and I'm going to go to simulation tags and make this a soft body, right? Basically, I'm going to go into more of this dynamic simulation in the lesson, right? So there's a separate lesson dedicated for dynamics. So for the plane itself, I'm going to right click and make this a under simulation tags. I'm going to make this a collider body, right? Basically, what we are saying to Cinema 4D is that this is going to serve as a solid object that can be collided by the soft body, right? So if I hit place, what happens? It goes in and I hit this plane right here, so it's acting like a soft body. Right now we're having some really terrible connection going on, so we're really having some really terrible intersection going on right here. One of the ways you can fix that is to click Ctrl D, and under the dynamics tab, dynamics rollout, we can select the expert, and this steps per frame we can turn it to about say 10, and that should fix our scene right here. So if I click play, see what happens. All right, so that's fixing our scene really nicely. All right, so we don't have those terrible deformations anymore, right? So I'm going to hit pause, and I'm going to just quickly increase the segments of this object. Just going to make it say about 25. That should be fine. And I'm going to try and hit this again and see how that looks like, right? So currently I don't want to use this particular mode. I'm going to change this to intertype to icosahedron, and I'm going to change this one also to icosahedron. So this works a bit better than the regular type. Alright, so we have this really nice information. Now if we were to do this same soft body simulation on this other sphere, this highly dense sphere, is going to take a lot of time, right? So that's why we're using it right here. And once we have the simulation done, all we need to do is to go to this soft body tag, go to cache, and I'm going to bake the entire object right now. So Cinema 4D is reading through all of these frames and basically is creating a cached simulation for this object, right? So for this soft body object. So we're just going to wait for that to finish, and that should be done in a minute from now. Alright, so there we have it. Now we can scrub through our timeline, and we have that deformation going right there. So all we need to do is to mirror this deformation to this particular detailed sphere. So I'm going to turn off this detailed sphere, and I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to make this surface a child of the detailed sphere, and under the object, the surface we're trying to transfer animation from is what we plug into here. So I'm going to drag this right here and see what's going to happen if I hit play. I need to click on the initialize, right? So if I click on initialize and see what happens. Okay, so I think you might have to turn this on, right? You might have to turn this on and then take this off and hit play. And okay, so there's still no animation going on. Alright, so I'm going to just click on initialize again. Okay, yeah, I think that should fix that. And yes, so we have that animation going on right here. So let me see if I disable this, animation is gonna happen. Alright, so it's not happening, so that means this needs to be checked. So with that checked, I'm going to click on initialize and hit play. So now we've been able to drive this dense sphere with this animation right here. So that's one of the applications of the surface deformer right there. Right, so I'm going to delete all of this, and I'm going to click on the next deformer we want to tackle. Right, so the next deformer I want to talk about is twist, right? And this is a very pretty much basic deformer, so it's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to create a sphere, and I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to make this about, say, 60, and I'm going to leave this to 200, and I'm going to turn this to about 60, so we have something like this. I want to increase the segment on the y-axis right here, and I'm just going to make this twist a chart of this. I'm going to click on the twist. I'm going to click on fit to parent, right? And I can just mess with the twist. So basically this is what the twist is giving to us right here. So this is looking really nice. And with the twist selected, we can click on this to animate it, right? So anywhere you see this little thing here, it means this feature can be animated, right? So I can turn this back to 0. On the first frame from 0, I can click on this keyframe. I can click on this thing, this little dot thing here, and when I click on this and a keyframe is created from 0, I can move to about, say, 140, and I can just mess with this and click on the keyframe again. So currently you have an animation going on. So those are some of the things you can do with the twist deformer. So you can have your object, say like a shoe, right, and you can just have a twist, right? So those are some of the things you can do with the twist deformer. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. I'm going to delete this twist deformer, and the next thing I want to bring in is the bend deformer right here. So if I click on this bend deformer, I can make it a child of this cube and fit to parent. Now the bend deformer is a very notorious deformer, right, in the sense that it usually doesn't bend in the right direction. But in this case we are really lucky, so it's bending in the right direction, right? So what I want to do is I want to bring back my twist deformer and just make it a child of this. So we can have more than one deformers, obviously, and I can click on fit to parent, and I can also twist this way. So I can go to my bend deformer and just work on the bend as well. So that's some of the things you can do with that. So we've touched upon we've touched the bend, the twist. We've also talked about the displacer. We've talked about the formula. We've talked about the surface, we've talked about the collision, right? So there are still some other deformer I want to talk about, and the next one I want to click is the taper deformer, right? So I can also drop this right here in the list. I can turn this bend deformer off a bit, and under the taper, basically it just does what it says. You can let me click fit to parent, and you can begin to taper this object right there. You can taper this, and you can increase the curvature right there. So all of this feature can be animated, right? So that's one of the things you can do with the taper deformer. And the next deformer I think I want to touch on is the bevel deformer right here. The bevel deformer is another very powerful one. So if I drop this bevel deformer right here, see what's happening. So it's beveling this. Let me turn off this bend. Let me just quickly turn off. Okay, that's fine. So basically let me turn off this, and see what's happening. The bevel deformer is beveling all these edges right here. Now a nice way to control the bevel deformer, so a nice way to control the bevel deformer is to create some selection sets. Now I can uncheck this and go to my okay, let me change this to an editable polygon. I'm going to make this editable, and the way I do that is to hit C on my keyboard, or I right click and click on make editable, right, which is the shortcut is C right here. And the next thing I want to do is I want to click on my edge selection. I can select the whole of this edge by double clicking on the first one, and I can go to select. I can click make selection. I can click on set selection, and now we have a selection that selects only this point here, right? So under the bevel, there's a space for selection, and I can drag this and drop right here. So if I check this back on, it's only going to bevel on this edge, leaving or ignoring this other edge in the scene, right? So that's a really nice way of controlling the bevel deformer. So I can decide to add some subdivision surface to it, and increase the beveling right there. I can turn this back on, turn this on, and turn this on. So there we go. right? So that's looking really really nice. So that's one of the things you can do with the bevel deformer. And let's see what we can still touch up on. So we have the spline wrap, which is the spline wrap is a very very powerful. It's another powerful deformer. So for the spline wrap, I'm going to delete all of this, and what I want to do is I want to quickly create a spline right here. So I'm just going to click on my I'm going to click on my sketch, and I'm able to just draw and draw some really nice sketch right here. So I have this nice sketch, and what I can do is just click on this mode and click on soft interpolation, and yeah, so I think that's looking really nice. One thing I can do is to go to my spline smooth and just try and smoothen up this spline a whole lot. So now this looking really smooth, right? And what I can do is to I can try and drive an object to wrap around this spline, right? So this is an interesting way to create some really nice motion. Say you have something like a reptile moving around uh, this spline right here. So I'm just going to quickly illustrate by creating a cylinder, and I'm going to just make this a bit smaller, and I'm going to add some really nice subdivisions in the height segments. Now what I want to do is to go to my deformers, and I want to click on my spline wrap, right? So I want to make the spline wrap a child of the cylinder, and under the spline wrap I'm going to drag in the spline as a spline object right here. So I'm going to drop this spline right here, and you see what's happening. So it's the formula along that spline. Obviously this is not what we want, so I'm going to first of all change this to keep length, and I'm going to change this axis. So currently I just want to play with this axis. I want to change this to say Z, and okay, Z is not working. I'm just going to try Y. Alright, so Y is working really nicely, and now I can turn this to fit spline. So that's going to stretch the whole of this across the spline, right? And I can click on to keep length, so that's going to keep the original length, and I can begin to move this way, and so and I can just click on offset to move this way. So I'm offsetting the entire length, so I can use this for some really nice reptile animation right there. So these are one of the things you can do with that display wrap. So that's that about that. And the next deformer I want to touch up on is the I think this should be the final one, and in the next class we're going to try and create more examples using this deformer right here. So the next thing I want to do is the bulge deformer. So I'm just going to delete everything, and I'm going to create a cube. I'm going to make this about 90. I'm going to leave the y to 200. I'm going to make this 90. So the bulge is a pretty straightforward deformer. It bulges your objects. I'm going to make this a child, fit to parent, and I can really begin to, okay, first of all I want to add some segments in the object. Just add some random segments right there, and I can go to my bulge and start increasing the strength. So basically it bulges out the object, right? So kind of similar to what the taper does, but not really. So we can click on the fillet. So you can click on the fillet right there and just begin to mesh things, right? This can really be nice in some modeling tasks, honestly. So you could use it to model a shape that kind of looks like this. So say for instance you're trying to model a flower vase, you could just quickly use the bulge to get some really nice shape going on right there. And when you're done, what you can do is just quickly select both of them and click on connect object and delete. So you can really begin to select this object and try and make this. So you delete this, and so you have that open vase kind of structure, and you can as well try and create something like a pillar with this. So I could just select all of this, and I can hold down control and I can begin to drag to make some really nice pillar, right? So these are some of the things you can do with this bulge object. So you can be using some modeling task. You can as well use to quickly create that really nice bulge animation going on here, right? So that is that about the deformers, right? So in the next class I'm going to talk more about deformers, and we're going to talk about some really practical applications of the deformers, right? So after that we're going to create our first product animation using everything we've learned so far from lesson 1 till now. Alright guys, so I'm going to see you in the next lesson.